Hello, my name is Phil Burse, and welcome to the Founders 15 podcast. I'm here today with Tzakhi Freedman from Meet Capital. Tzakhi, how are you?
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be
Absolute
here.
pleasure. Absolute pleasure. We're 15 minutes, so let's crack on. My first question to you is the method, the journey, the way that we reach out to investors, particularly angels, has lots of different components. One of the things I know you're incredibly passionate about is making sure that the message that you're presenting to the world is on point and on brand and consistent across all your platforms. Could you share your thesis, your how you like to work with founders to make sure they are fully prepared to raise?
Sure. Let's just take a step back. If you're early stage, you're reaching out to investors, and basically, if you're a founder and you're raising capital, you decided to go that route. That's your main job is to raise money, and you're probably doing whatever you can to get connected with introductions and using your network and growing your network, going to events. All that is great. Most likely, you do not have, unless you're super connected, you probably do not have the luxury of not spending some of your time reaching out to investors and growing your network proactively, simply because it's super hard to raise money, especially now.
Mm.
But it just is. It just seems to be a fact of life. There are always more founders raising capital than money available for them, and therefore the ones that are ready to do the extra work and hustle for it are the ones that are going to get the money they need, build their startup, and hopefully then also succeed building it. So that's the starting point. And the place to do it, I believe, is LinkedIn. You can also use email. That's a whole different methodology. It has advantages, disadvantages, but I think no one will disagree. LinkedIn is a great place to connect with people professionally and especially investors, and especially angel investors.
Mm.
Now, if you're a bit later stage, you're reaching out to VCs, LinkedIn is a great tool, but it's a bit different because you might have a smaller potential pool of actually good, relevant investors, and therefore you might not want to do cold outreach to them as the first step. You might do that as a second step, meaning there's an investor that you think is a great fit for you. He's a VC or she's a VC, and you don't have a good way to connect with them through an introduction or whatever, then you might reach out cold to them, but it wouldn't be your first choice. Whereas with angels, there are lots of angels, and therefore, first thing you should think of is, how do I just reach out to a lot of angels and connect with a lot of angels so that I get into meetings with them and hopefully raise money, if you're at that stage, which is usually the seed stage of a startup.
Mm.
So far, so good?
All good so far.
Okay, so if you're doing it on LinkedIn, then you need to have your LinkedIn set up for that. Meaning, if your main mission now is to raise capital, you need to adjust your LinkedIn profile. So you are no longer looking for a job, if you ever were. And your LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn is set up mostly for job seekers. So you need to kind of avoid the natural way of building your LinkedIn profile or whatever seems to be the most easy and simple way to build your profile, and need to adjust it a bit and think about it as a founder that's raising capital. So that's super important. Your LinkedIn has to match your mission, and it has to be around your startup and whatever you're raising for, not about yourself. You're not looking for a job. That's clear, I guess, right?
I'm with you. So it's about switching mindset to begin with, away from what LinkedIn was originally designed for, which is finding and being found job wise, and using it as more of a sales tool. Is that where we're going, Tzakhi?
It could be a sales tool if you want sales, but if you're raising capital, then now you need to think about it as a founder raising capital.
Okay.
And it's no longer about you. It's about the startup. It's about your mission. It's about whatever you're doing as a founder, which is beyond you as a person. Understood? When you're looking for a job, you're presenting yourself, because ultimately you're the thing that's going to be taken to. Now, of course, investors are interested in the team, especially early on. That's all true. But I'm just saying that the focus should be on your startup. Okay? So the way to do it is to build a profile in a way that if an investor sees your profile, and we'll get to how we get them to see your profile in a minute if we have it, if they see your profile, they need to immediately understand what you're about and what you're doing. So they need to understand that you are a founder of a startup, that you're up and coming, innovative, uh, um, fast to grow, that you're exciting, and um, and that has to be projected right from the headline of your LinkedIn profile. So probably if there's only one thing that you're going to do, and I suggest that you do a few things, but if there's just one thing that you need to do is just adjust the headline of your LinkedIn profile so that it becomes clear from your headline what you're doing. So
Okay.
it could be CEO and founder at XX.ai, changing XX with AI. And then maybe if you have it, something about your past, which would also give a validation to investors. For instance, in your case, you could talk about your previous successes as a startup founder in your previous company. So you can just mention that right in your headline. So investors will naturally be drawn to you. And even without any message sent, they already know what you're about and why. If they're interested in investing in early stage startups, they might want to connect with you.
Okay. So setting the headline out, setting the big picture, as in, I am this. This is my business. We've got this mission. Would you suggest that yes, I see lots on LinkedIn of we're currently raising, we're currently SEIS, we're currently looking for, some people put the amount that they're raising on. What are your thoughts on that, Tzakhi?
Yeah, I don't think SEIS, or I mean, maybe SEIS is a bit specific to the UK, and maybe
Yeah.
that kind of presses a specific button in the mind of the investor. So that's not bad. I would not put the amount right in the headline.
Okay.
And I'm not even sure that I would even put the fact that you're even raising because it's kind of obvious, especially if
Okay.
you do what we spoke about, what we started with, which is going to do cold outreach and reach out proactively to investors. So if you're going to send a connection request to an investor and they see that your profile is founder at this and that, reinventing, reimagining, changing the world for buzzwords. Here you don't need, you can be shamelessly use a buzzword to make it clear that you are doing something innovative and outgoing that is exciting and interesting. And that's all. The investor has a brain and they get pitched a lot and they will understand that you're reaching out to them because they're an investor and you're a startup founder. So you don't need to, spell it out. They'll know. They won't be surprised that you're raising capital.
Okay. So we've got the headline bit, Tzakhi. What do we do next? What's the next stage?
Um, Look, we don't have a lot of time, so I don't know if I should go like into the breakdown of the whole profile, but just the clarity of it is just the principle is that set up your profile, make it look nice, professional. Your picture, don't just cut off something from your last vacation. Make a nice professional headshot. It's not hard with like today's mobile. You don't need to go to a professional. You just do it at home, but make it look professional. Um, uh, have a background image, have your about section, talk about, again, your startup before you start talking about yourself, and just make things look clean and professional, and make sure, for instance, that on your list of professional experience, whatever you're doing now and whatever you care about is on top and highlighted. Um,
Okay.
these are commonsensical things. We have a guide, by the way, that spell these out. 5 quick steps to set up your LinkedIn profile for startup founders. We give that out for free, so you can just come to our website to downloads page and take it.
Okay.
The next, how much time do we have?
We're cruising. We're doing well. We're on 6 minutes left, Tzakhi. Don't worry. We're
Awesome.
good. We're
Awesome.
good.
Great. So let's move to the next thing, which is
Let's do it.
actually reaching out to investors. So a lot of people are kind of worried about the idea of spamming. Do not spam. It's very simple. Just don't do it. Spamming is just mass messaging people without having a good enough reason to do it. Cold outreach is not spam. It is when you're doing a very, very focused, researched outreach to people that you know are relevant to you, and you're just gently knocking on their virtual door on LinkedIn. That's what LinkedIn is created for, and just asking to see if they're interested. So don't rush in, don't barge at the door, just knock on it. So what I recommend is not to make a long note when you send a message to an investor. If your LinkedIn profile is set up correctly, you don't need it because, like I said, they will guess why you're reaching out to them. So all you need to do is just send them a blank connection request. If they are even slightly interested, they will accept it. And if it's something if they're just not interested in getting pitched, they will just not accept it. And that will be the end of the communication. Very easy, at the least pushy way to do it, I believe, and the most effective way. Also, because you're saving your time and your energy, you're not crafting a message to every investor without knowing that they're even interested in hearing it. So the first thing is you're just knocking on the door with a connection request. Probably a step before that, which I probably should have had the order opposite. First is who you're reaching out to. So, of course, only reach out to people that you have a really good reason to think that they might be interested in connecting with you. That's all. It's really quite simple. And usually, if you're a startup founder, you kind of know who might be interested in you. Okay. So just look at the person's profile that you want to connect with. Make sure that they're actually an investor, that they're actually talk about investing. Sometimes it might be that they're sitting on boards. That's close enough. So if someone's sitting on a board of a few startups or a few companies, it's probably because he or she invested in them. So that's good enough. But a lot of angels and the angels that want to connect with startups and are interested in this kind of communication, and there are a lot of them. They're not millions upon millions of them, but there are enough of them. They usually write on their profile what they are and that they're investors and that they're experienced, etc. And that's why you're reaching out to them, not because you think that they should invest in you. Meaning, I don't recommend seeing someone that has, I don't know, experience in your realm and looks like they have a very high-paying job and therefore they have money to invest, and just reaching out to them if they haven't indicated on their LinkedIn profile that they're investors, or maybe you found somewhere else, you found it on Crunchbase that they're listed as investors. That's fine, but I would not reach out to someone just because you think they're good investors. It needs to be obvious from information that they've put out there that they are interested in investing, and that makes reaching out to them natural and unspammy.
Okay. So we've got, forgive me, Tzakhi, we've got preparing the profile. Get that, makes a lot of sense. We've got sort of creating a list of potential people you want to reach out to. That completely makes sense. And then I think we've got the initial approach, which I love that. It's quite an original idea for me because I'm used to sending very long, convoluted messages to potential investors. And I think your approach is let your profile tell the story. And if they want to connect, then it's almost like a litmus test. If they do accept the connection, then there's potentially that they're open to being pitched with it. And I think that's kind of where that's a really, really important learning for me. That's really interesting. Where do you go from there? What's the next step or the next point in the process?
One point before that, just about the research that you're doing. I talked a bit about deciding whether the person whose profile you're looking at is actually a potential investor and worth reaching out to. I didn't say a lot of stuff which is kind of obvious. For instance, their sectors, their experience, avoiding people that clearly say, do not reach out to me here, send me an email. These are kind of obvious, but people tend to forget them. Another thing that for us is obvious because we've done it so much, we've helped so many founders, but I notice that people don't think of is you need to check whether the person you're reaching out to is an active LinkedIn user. Because lots of people have a LinkedIn profile and they filled it up once and they rarely check their LinkedIn profile. It's just a waste of time to reach out to them because they're not answering, not because they don't like you or not interested, they're just not there. So it's very easy to look on the LinkedIn profile and see if someone has been active, even if they've liked a post. It doesn't matter what they've done, but it's just an indication that that there's a pulse, that there's someone there.
And that's on, and you talk about that on your website, on the Meet Capital website. You have the ability to buy a list of angels or VCs from your website, and I noticed one of the things was you put a lot of value on whether they are on LinkedIn, whether they are premium account holders, whether they are active, I assume, within the last 30 or 90 days. And you believe that's a really important part because, as you say, there's lots of people that go on LinkedIn 10 years ago and have never used it since. So that's really useful insight, Tzakhi. That's really, really, really good.
Yeah, we have a team that's just checked a lot of profiles and done that for you, but you can just do it yourself. It's not so hard. It's just don't waste your energy reaching out to someone and your time reaching out to someone that's not even there. It's we get a lot of no's as founders. Whatever you're doing, you get a lot of rejection. So you try to reduce it a bit by just being more effective in who you're reaching out to. You'll get a much higher rate of positive responses if you're reaching out to people that are actually there. Okay, the last part is your message, which we won't. I don't think we can get into detail here, but only after someone has accepted the connection request will you send the message. And here, without getting again into the details, just the principle is there are different approaches. My approach has always been there's a kind of balance between being direct but not being overly pushy. So it's important to be direct at this point, I believe, because the one thing people hate the most is having a waste of time. So starting to ask them how they're doing or talking about something unrelated or mentioning some post that they've made, it all sounds like a nice way to start a conversation. It might be when you're meeting someone at a cocktail party, not online. Online, you just have to be direct because if they're an investor that's interested in meeting startup founders and potentially investing in them, they will be curious about your startup. They want to hear it. And if not, it's not going to work anyway. There's no amount of schmoozing that you're going to do that's going to turn that around. So just go ahead and tell them about yourself. But we don't want to be too pushy. You haven't met them yet. You don't know anything about them. You're not asking them to invest. You're not. I think you should be even asking them for a meeting or anything. Just ask them, "Is this interesting?" That's all.
That's it.
So just tell them a bit about you in a very. We have a method or a template of how to do that and like how to highlight your strongest points as a startup and try to highlight the things that investors care about the most in your pitch. You have to be truthful always.
Yeah.
But be truthful using whatever you can to highlight your strengths. And then, would you like to learn more? Would you like me to send you something? Would you like to? Could this be of interest? That's it. Because if they're not, again, there's no magic way of convincing someone that's just they might not be interested because it's bad timing. That could be that they're not interested in your domain. It could be that they've invested in a startup just like you last week. There's a lot of reasons. So there's no point in there's not a lot that you can do aside than just put yourself out there. And if it's a fit, if they're interested, then it will go to the next step, which is hopefully you'll send them in. They'll share their email or they'll say yes, and you'll send them some information. And from there, you schedule a call.
I love it. I love it, Jack. I can't think of a simpler way of explaining it than the way you've just explained it over the last kind of 15 minutes. And I'm conscious we're sort of running out of time, but I just want to recap the process. And please correct me if I've got any of this wrong. But there's the profile setup piece, which is putting your best foot forward, being very, very clear about what you're doing. Next step is the research phase, which is finding a curated list of investors you think potentially would be interested. The next stage is a simple connection request with no particular message on, just as almost like a litmus test to see if they're open to a conversation. And even when they're connected, then the next litmus test is very brief summary of what you're doing. And the question which really, really stood out in my mind was, are you interested? So not sending them a pitch deck, not sending them your financials, not getting them, trying to book them in for a meeting, just, are you interested? And again,
Right.
I love these little, it's almost like a series of litmus tests, getting them to the point where you can tell that they're slightly warmed up to a conversation. And I think that's fantastic. Have I got that right, Tzakhi? Does that kind of make
Yeah, yeah.
sense of a,
The way I like to think of it is that at this stage, before there's any interaction, there's no business happening yet, but there's
mm,
still an exchange. And what's exchange is they might be curious, hopefully, if they're really interested. If they're real investors that are interested in investing, then they're curious. And you have information and you want their attention and their time. That's before what happens next, okay? The
yeah.
partnership, the investment. At this early stage, there's still an exchange. So you can't just go into that exchange just giving it all away. It's just not,
Mm.
it won't help you. You can't just, oh, here's my deck, here's everything, here's what I do, here's a white paper. No, they don't, they need to earn it too. The investor needs to earn getting your information. It should have at least there should be some level of confidentiality around what you're doing anyway.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm honestly, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, Tzakhi, and I'm going to have to wrap it up due to our very, very self-imposed time constraints for this podcast session. But just
Yes.
finally, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I know you've got so much more to give in this process. Where would you direct people who would like to learn more about you, the process, and how you can optimize things like your LinkedIn profile?
Sure. Come to www.meet.capital. We have a downloads page. Take our free LinkedIn guide, and there's a lot of free content. Sign up to our newsletter. We give 5 startup tips every week from different guests, and a lot of content. So come over there.
Cool. I would advocate for that. I read it. It's brilliant. Some great advice on there. I would definitely recommend people to go and take a look. Tzakhi Freedman, it's been an incredibly fast but brilliant 20 minutes. Thank you again for your time, and I really appreciate you sharing your insight today.
Thank you so much, Phil. This was great. Thank you.
Thanks.